The stars were quiet here. Too quiet. An alien patrol ship, the Vathrix, drifted at the edge of a scarred star system, once the site of the bloodiest battles of the Great Galactic War. The war was over now, at least on paper. The borders were secure. The enemy humans were gone. Or so everyone believed. Inside the Vathrix, the crew moved lazily through their duties. Scanners swept the void in slow, steady arcs, more out of routine than expectation. No one expected trouble here, not this far from the core worlds. Then a sound broke the calm. A sharp, steady ping from the long-range sensors. Lieutenant Core, a thin, green-scaled officer, leaned over the console. His yellow eyes narrowed. "Captain, I'm detecting an unknown signal. Very faint. Bearing 185 by 7. The captain, a broad-shouldered alien with a single silver horn curling from his skull, approached. Source? Core's clawed fingers danced over the controls. It's a distress beacon. Old frequency. Human. The bridge went silent. Even the faint hum of the engines seemed to fade. Human technology hadn't been seen in decades, in fact. The war had ended with their destruction. At least. That was the story told in every academy and history book. The captain's voice was calm, but there was a hint of curiosity. Pinpointed. Core adjusted the scanners. It's coming from a small object, drifting near an asteroid cluster. Mass suggests an escape pod. Murmurs rippled across the bridge. An escape pod meant survivors. Survivors meant questions the Galactic Council would pay handsomely to have answered. Helm, the captain ordered, set a course. Intercept speed. The Vathrix turned toward the signal. The crew watched through the viewport. As the asteroid cluster came into view, jagged rocks slowly tumbling through the black. The pod appeared moments later small, battered, its hull blackened from heat and impact. Magnetics are locked, the helmsman reported. The pod drifted toward the docking bay. Through its small viewport, they could see the shape of a figure. Slumped inside humanoid, still, UNMOVING. When the pod settled into the bay with a dull thud, the retrieval team suited up. 6 armed guards, each carrying a plasma rifle, moved in with practiced precision. The hatch was sealed tight, but the engineers made short work of it, cutting the edges with a thermal lance. As the hatch fell away, a gust of stale air escaped. The guards raised their weapons. Inside lay a single human male. His armor was dented and cracked, patches scorched from energy blasts. Dried blood clung to the plates. His face was pale beneath the helmet's shattered visor, his eyes closed. Of the guards muttered in his native tongue, "I thought they were all dead." "Not this one," another replied. The captain arrived in the bay, his heavy boots echoing on the metal floor. He studied the prisoner with an appraising gaze. Humans were smaller than most of his kind, but this one's build was lean and strong. His hands were still clenched into fists, even in unconsciousness. "Alive?" the captain asked. A medic knelt beside the human, scanning with a handheld device. Faint pulse. "He's barely holding on." The captain's silver horn glinted. "In the bay's lights. Bring him aboard. Secure him. No harm until we know more. If this is truly a human from the war, the council will want answers." The guards lifted the human onto a grav sled and began moving him toward the ships. Interior. The moment they passed through the bay's inner doors, every display screen in the room flickered. Technicians looked up from their stations. "Power surge," one said. "It's nothing, probably interference from the pod systems." But the flicker didn't stop. Small anomalies appeared across the ship. A navigation error here, a temperature spike in the mess hall there. Minor problems, easy to ignore. Still, the timing was strange. By the time the human reached the medical ward, the ship's environmental monitors had begun reporting incorrect readings, oxygen levels fluctuating by tiny amounts. gravity briefly dipping before stabilizing. The crew blamed it on faulty sensors. Only the captain noticed the pattern. The malfunctions began the exact moment the human crossed the airlock dot in the medical ward. The human was placed on a diagnostic bed. The medic removed his helmet carefully, revealing a face marked by scars and grime. His breathing was shallow but steady. The captain leaned close. "You are supposed to be extinct, human, and yet here you are." No response. The human didn't even twitch. Satisfied that the prisoner was secure, the captain turned to leave. Restrain him, and he stopped. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw movement. The human's fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered. Then, for just a second, his eyes opened cold, sharp and alert. Every light in the room flickered. The hum of the engines dropped to a low growl. Then, just as quickly, the lights returned to normal, and the human's eyes closed again. The captain stared at him for a long moment. A thought whispered in the back of his mind. One he didn't like. We didn't find him. He found us. The alien raiding ship cut through deep space, its hull glistening under the pale light of a distant star. In the prisoner bay, the human sat on the cold metal floor, wrists bound by glowing restraints. His eyes were calm, almost bored, as if he were waiting for something. Two of the guards, tall, insectoid warriors with chitinous armor, stood outside the cell, conversing in their own tongue. "Such a fragile thing," one hissed. "Barely worth the fuel to transport," the other replied with a laugh. "The warlord wants exotic specimens for the pits. This one will be torn apart in seconds." The human opened his eyes and tilted, his head studying them. He couldn't understand their words exactly, but their tone and smirking mandibles told him enough. They thought he was prey. Hours earlier, he had been in a dense forest in the Pacific Northwest, tracking deer for food. Then a blinding beam of light split the night sky, and before he could raise his rifle, the ground beneath him had vanished. He awoke in the belly of this alien ship. The corridor outside his cell was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of machine oil and something acrid. A single overhead strip of alien script glowed faintly in red emergency standby lighting. Either the ship was conserving energy, or they didn't think their cargo deserved more. One of the guards tapped the cell's force field, sending a sharp crackle of energy across its surface. The human didn't flinch. "Not very lively," one guard mocked. "He'll be lively enough in the arena," the other said, adjusting the strange bladed weapon at his hip. The man allowed himself the smallest of smiles. They had no idea. When they had captured him, the aliens hadn't scanned deep enough. They'd seen a lone human wearing a torn jacket, carrying a primitive rifle, no visible technology. They hadn't noticed the faint scar at the base of his neck or the subdermal implant hidden there. That implant was still active. It was listening. In the warlord's command chamber, high above the prisoner decks, alien officers gathered around a holographic projection of the ship's course. Arrival at Drax Prime in 23 cycles, a navigator announced. The warlord will receive the specimen then. Another officer, a grizzled veteran, glanced at the prisoner's file and frowned. Why was this one taken alive? "Warlord's orders," the junior officer replied. "Said something about testing the creature in the pits. Claims it's from a death world." "A death world?" "Ha, that's just ancient spacer superstition. The humans are long gone." The grizzled officer shrugged, but didn't argue. He'd heard stories, too, about a species that fought until the last breath, that turned even their dying into a weapon. But those were just ghost tales from old spacers, right? Back in the cell, the human closed his eyes again, not to sleep, but to listen. A faint vibration pulsed in the implant at the base of his skull. It was a signal. Link acquired. His lips moved silently. The implant picked up the muscle movement, translating it into a tight beam transmission invisible to alien sensors. "This is Raven. Package secure. Confirm location." A voice, calm and metallic, replied in his mind. "Location confirmed. ETA to intercept. 6 hours." He allowed himself the first real smile since capture. The aliens thought they had found prey. In 6 hours, they would learn they had trapped something else in Tyr. The alien raiding ship drifted through the void, its engines humming in a deep, constant vibration dot in the small metal cell. The human, Daniel Rourke, sat with his eyes closed, breathing slow and steady. He had not moved in hours. The guards thought he was resting. They didn't know he was listening. Every thud of a boot, every hiss of the ship's doors, every scrape of alien armor against metal, he was mapping it all in his head. He had already counted the footsteps of each guard. He knew which ones limped, which ones got bored and leaned on the wall, which ones tapped their claws against the cell bars when they passed. He also knew something they didn't: the ship's artificial gravity was unstable. Every few hours there was a slight shudder, a fraction of a second where the pull lessened. It was small, but small openings were all Daniel needed. Just a few more hours, he thought. Down the hall, the 2 alien guards assigned to his cell laughed in their guttural language. "Still breathing?" one of them asked, peering in. The other shrugged. "Humans, weak, slow, soft. I've eaten stronger prey." Daniel didn't react. He let them think he didn't understand. He had been letting them think that since the first day. Later, the ship's loudspeakers crackled with an announcement. An alien officer's voice barked orders. There had been trouble in the cargo bay. The guards stiffened, listening. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. If there was a fight elsewhere, security would be stretched thin. The 2 guards argued for a moment before one left to help with the disturbance. Only one guard remained, standing lazily near the door. Daniel opened his eyes. The guard saw him move and tilted his head. "What? Finally awake?" Daniel stood slowly, his expression calm. "I've been awake the whole time," he said. In perfect alien speech. The guard froze. Then, before the alien could even raise its weapon, Daniel stepped forward, fast. Too fast for something they thought was slow. A sharp twist. A muffled choke. A body crumpled to the floor. Daniel knelt beside the fallen guard, stripping the weapon and the access chip from its armor. The alien's claws twitched once, then stilled. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just whispered to himself. Step 1 complete. The ship shook faintly again. The unstable gravity was coming, and when it did, Daniel Rourke would no longer be a prisoner. The alien warship Vorax Fang had been quiet for almost an hour. Too quiet. In the command chamber, Captain Dreck's claws tapped impatiently on the armrest of his throne-like chair. "Where is he?" he growled. "The human has not made a sound since we left the system." A junior officer hesitated. "Perhaps." "He is sleeping, Captain?" The captain's crest flared in irritation. Humans do not sleep when caged. They scratch. They fight. They try to escape. This one, he leaned forward, is waiting. That word sent a ripple of unease through the crew. Waiting meant planning. Planning meant danger. Inside the cell, the human sat cross-legged in the center of the small metal cell. His hands rested calmly on his knees, his breathing slow and steady. His eyes were open now, fixed on the single dim light in the ceiling. Every so often, he whispered to himself, not words, but numbers. Counting, measuring the length of the ship's vibrations, tracking engine pulses, mapping every corridor in his mind from the footsteps he'd heard earlier. A message from nowhere. Then, without warning, the small embedded chip behind his ear clicked alive. A voice came through, so faint it could barely be heard over the hum of the ship. Ardent to Ghostwalker. Confirm capture. The man didn't move. His lips barely parted. Confirmed. In position. The voice continued. Signal green. Commence at your discretion. The net is ready. The line went dead. The first strike. 2 guards entered the cell with a bowl of something gray and steaming. One of them smirked. The other simply shoved the food toward him. The man moved so suddenly that neither had time to react. In a blur, the bowl smashed into the first guard's face, blinding him with boiling stew. The second reached for his weapon only, for the human to twist his arm at a sharp, ugly angle. The alien shrieked. No wasted movement, no hesitation. Within seconds, both guards were on the floor, unconscious or worse. The ship reacts alarms howled. Lights flashed red. The corridors of the Vorax Fang came alive with shouting voices and pounding footsteps. Captain Drek slammed a claw down on the console. Seal Section 12. Release the hunter drones. But as the order went out, the lights across the ship flickered, then dimmed entirely. The engines dropped to a low rumble. The captain turned in shock toward his navigator. What just happened? The navigator swallowed. Captain, external control override. Someone's taken the ship. The alien crew didn't know it yet, but the hunter they had captured had just opened the door for something far bigger. The alien cruiser's bridge was silent. Not the normal, focused kind of silence before a battle. This was the silence of fear. Every crew member stared at the central holoscreen, where a grainy, static-filled image was frozen. A man's face. It was the same prisoner they had taken from the blue-green planet weeks ago, the human they had mocked as a primitive. But the image wasn't from their security feed. It was coming from an encrypted frequency, one the ship's communications array wasn't even supposed to be able to receive. The human's voice came through, distorted but calm. I warned you not to take me. The captain's hands tightened. On the console. Trace it. He barked. The comms officer shook his head, terrified. It's impossible. The signal is coming from, he swallowed, inside the ship. Before the captain could speak, the ship's lights flickered. A deep vibration ran through the floor. Emergency klaxons screamed, but not in their usual tone. This was a strange, warbling alarm, one that none of the crew recognized. Systems began shutting down one by one. Weapons, offline. Shields, offline. Engines, locked. The crew scrambled, shouting in confusion, but the captain's eyes never left the frozen image of the human. I told you, the voice continued, unshaken. You picked the wrong man. And then everything went black. Not just the lights, not just the screen's reality itself seemed to go dark, as though something had cut their ship out of the galaxy. A single red light appeared in the darkness, a circle, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. The voice spoke again, this time colder. Your ship is mine now. The crew realized too late that they were not the hunters anymore. They had become the prey. The Vorak dreadnought had been gutted, its bridge a twisted mess of scorched alloy and drifting debris. From the shattered viewport, Commander Reese watched the silent void, but his eyes weren't on the drifting wreckage. They were fixed on the hunter, the human warship that had arrived without warning. It still hadn't fired a single visible shot. The hunter floated like a predator in the dark, its black hull absorbing all light. Only the faint outline of its edges could be seen when a dying star's flicker caught it. Around it, Vorak ships broke apart, one by one, as if something invisible was slicing through them. No flashes, no missiles, no laser fire, just ships dying. Reese swallowed. He'd been a soldier for 20 years, but nothing in his training prepared him for this kind of warfare. The Vorak, the galaxy's most feared predators, weren't even firing back. They couldn't. They didn't know where to fire. Somewhere deep inside the wreck, One of the Vorak captains screamed over the comms in their guttural tone. Shadows are cutting our hull. Shields are useless. Sensors see nothing. Rees heard the panic in their voice. The Vorak never panicked. Then the hunter moved. It didn't drift or accelerate like other ships. It jumped. One instant it was hundreds of kilometers away. The next it was right above a Vorak battlecruiser. There was a ripple in space, a shimmer that lasted less than a second, and the battlecruiser's spine snapped in two. A whisper reached Reese's ears. Not through the comms, not through the ship's systems, but inside his mind. One target remains, the flagship. He stiffened. That voice wasn't Vorak, it wasn't alien. It was human. On the hunter, Captain Alera stood in the command. Pit, her eyes glowing faintly from the neural link. Her crew was silent, their hands moving across ancient controls that didn't match any modern galactic interface. The ship itself seemed alive, breathing in faint pulses of blue light along its walls. Target lock, murmured her tactical officer. Fire, Alera said softly. There was no sound, no beam. Just a ripple, like reality bending for a moment. The Vorak flagship, a warship the size of a small moon, simply came apart. Entire sections drifted away, cut with surgical precision. No explosion. No heat. Just cold dissection. In the stunned silence that followed, Alera gave a single order. Leave one escape pod. Let them tell the galaxy. Back on Reese's crippled ship, the comms lit up with an automated broadcast, a voice speaking. Galactic standard with flawless clarity. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. This is our warning. The transmission ended. The hunter vanished. No jump signature, no warp trace, nothing. Just silence. And in that silence, Reese realized something that chilled him more in the Vorak ever. The galaxy had no idea what humanity's real weapons were. And if this was just one ship, what else was out there?